Hey Gear Seekers, I'm Nick. Today we're checking out one of the most hotly anticipated cases of the year, the brand new Lian Li Lancool III. Now we've had this case sitting here for a little while, so it's about time that we took a closer look. So let's take that closer look. We'll start off with the panel removal. It's got these handy dandy little flaps along the front edge here. All you do is you pop them and the door swings wide open, and then you can just lift the panel off and get the glass out of the way. Now you can leave it on while you're building, but I would suggest not. The backside's the same deal as well. Lift the flap and then we slide this glass panel up. These can be kind of tricky sometimes. This is a very early sample of the case as well. And now with this glass panels off, we can remove the front panel, which basically like any other case, we'll just pull it out of the way and the front panel comes off. And now we can remove the mesh side panels, which are like these wings that hide everything. But you do need to remove the front panel before these side panels come off. The top panel is also removable. There's a single captive thumb screw that holds that panel in. Loosen that screw, pull back, and the top mesh panel comes off as well. Lastly are the magnetic rear panels that cover all of your cables, which means you can have terrible cable management and you'll never ever see it. Pull this panel first and then you can lift it up and get it out of the way. And the same thing goes with this front panel, also magnetic. We can pull that out, lift that up, and away we go. And now we can see everything. For power supply support, you've got a maximum of up to 220 mils if you leave these cages in. The drive cages are removable, so that's up to you. And the power supply loads in through the back with this little bracket here. We've seen this on hundreds of cases. This is nothing new, but storage support in this case is kind of ridiculous. So we've got two 2.5-inch sleds here. We can do 3 2.5-inch drives along the edge of this back panel here. You can do 4 spinning rush drives in these cages in the basement here, and then 3 more drives on the inside on the bottom panel. 1 M.2 usually suffices for most people, that and a spinning rush drive. So if you really wanted to build this thing out like a maniac, you could. One difference between this case that we've got here and the retail one is this one only has 3 pre-installed fans. There's actually usually 4. This is a very, very early sample. This has been sitting here for about 2 to 3 months. So I think they probably added that later on with their retail packaging. But as you can see here, there's 3 of these 140mm PWM fans right up the front. They are addressable RGB. One thing that made the Lancool II special to me was the fact that it had a removable front fan bracket. They've gone one step further with the Lancool III and allows you to remove the top bracket of the case as well. And the screws that it includes are actually captive, so you won't lose them. This top bracket will allow you to install radiators up to 420 mils or 360 mil. You can see it's got a fill port as well, which should probably be blocked if you use a 420 mil rad. However, Lian Li has stated that if you're going to install a 420 mil rad, that you should actually leave that bracket in the case and mount it like this. It's a little bit tight, it will fit. They also recommend the radiator ports being on this side. You probably wouldn't install a rear fan for a massive radiator like this. Sometimes it's not required. Also, the reason why is you won't be able to feed the panel back through into position if you don't install it while it's in the case. 360mm rad up the front, 3 120mm fans on the bottom, or a 360mm rad at the bottom as well. As mentioned, the front fan bracket is much like the Lancool II, where you can remove it and flip it over. Basically, it's got 2 thumb screws, 1 on the side, 1 up the front here. There's a little latch up here. If you push the latch in, you can push the fan bracket back out, and you can pull that bracket out and remove it. So I'm not gonna pull it out because I think I'm gonna use these fans in the build, but you can see that if I flipped it over, it would go back in and actually create additional clearance for radiators and fans at the front. Lastly, there's a single 120 or 140mm fan mount at the rear of the case. So you can see that there's quite a bit of cooling potential here. You've got these 3 huge Velcro tie down points for the main cable raceway. The rest of the tie down points in the case are also Velcro, and they've got these little anchor points on them as well. There's a few regular cable tie downs as well that I think they could have had more, to be honest. Lian Li traditionally has pretty good cable management, but I guess we'll find out when we actually build in it. For the internal case wiring, we've got a front panel audio connector. There's also a USB Type-C front panel connector and a USB 3.2 Type-A connector. There's this combined power block for your motherboard. As mentioned, the fans are PWM, so they do have these 4-pin PWM fan connectors, as well as 3-pin 5-volt addressable RGB pass-through for your motherboard. The case does have an integrated RGB controller, which allows for further expansion with regular old 3-pin 5-volt addressable RGB as well. And there's 3 additional connectors for all your light strips and everything you want to chuck in here. For front panel I/O, we've got some RGB controls here, a combined headphone and microphone jack, a reset button, a power button, 2 USB Type-A ports, and a USB Type-C port. The front panel I/O is kind of interesting in this case as well, because this I/O here can be moved from the top position, and with just 2 screws can be moved to this lower position here. However, I have some concerns with the USB ports if you're plugging things in, because it still retains the same angle as you would see on the top of the case when it's top mounted. So that's something that we're not going to be looking into in this video, because I don't feel like undoing all of the cable management that comes out of the factory with this, because it's quite a lot. Motherboard support. You can go from ITX all the way up to eATX with a maximum width of 280mm. Now, it might not look like it, however, it's got a handy dandy little trick up sleeve, much like the Lancool II, where instead of flipping the bracket over with screws, you basically loosen 2 screws, and this is on a sliding mechanism. So if you wanted to use a much wider board, you can. Now, they say 280mm on this, however, this panel is completely removable. So I think if you really wanted to, you could go with SSI EEB. In terms of air cooler support, 185mm is the max. That is quite a lot. There aren't very many air coolers that even get close to that. For GPU support, you've got up to 420mm of clearance. Here's the ROG STRIX RTX 3080 12GB OC. And we can see there is ridiculous amounts of space in this case for everything. So you're not going to have too much trouble fitting the largest GPUs that are out right now. There's 2 more of these 3.5-inch hard disk sleds that can be mounted in the basement of the case, as well as this handy dandy little box with basically everything that you need to get building. That's everything you need to know about the brand new Lian Li Lancool III for now. Let's do our thing. Let's do a build. All right, ladies and gents, I hope you enjoyed this build in the brand new Lian Li Lancool III, but let's quickly take a look at the thermals. What you're seeing on your screen right now is the thermals are pretty darn excellent. Take into account we're running the 12900KS, and typically this CPU is a very, very hot CPU. So both with the panels completely pulled off and with all the panels on, we're not seeing much of a difference in cooling performance here. Now, I think the real limiting factor with this setup, to be honest, like with a bit of hindsight, is me using this older Lian Li cooler that doesn't technically support LGA 1700. Because this is an Asus board, I use the LGA 1200 mounting holes. Do whatever you want with those numbers. You can analyze it for yourself, but that's what we found. Okay, let's quickly chat about those parts. As mentioned, the CPU is the Intel Core i9-12900KS. It's the hot boy. We put the 12900KS on the Asus ROG Strix Z690E gaming Wi-Fi. To cool the 12900KS, we use the Lian Li Galahad 360 all-in-one liquid cooler. The RAM is 64 gigs of Corsair Dominator Platinum DDR5 at 5200 megatransfers. All of the fans are the brand new Lian Li SL120 Infinity Unifans. And the cable extensions are the brand new Lian Li Strimmer V2 Plus cables. But I'm not gonna chat about all the parts. There's a PC part picker list down below in the description. But let's talk about the Lancool III. The build quality of the Lancool III, no surprises here, is absolutely fantastic. Lian Li absolutely nailed it. Now, if we compare this to the Lancool II and the Lancool II Mesh, this is physically a much bigger case. That being said, from memory with the Lancool II, you couldn't put a 360mm rad up the top. You can with this. This one you can do up to a 420 in the top, so it is quite interesting. However, there are some compromises with saying that. The 420mm rad, as mentioned with the part where we took a closer look at everything, is you actually need to leave that removable top panel in the case so you can put that radiator in. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Hello, visitor. The fact that there is just so many different ways to mount fans in this case is really cool. As mentioned, there are a few little weird things that they decided to do. The fact that you can move that front IO to the bottom is a bit of a weird choice for me, considering you probably won't be able to use the USB ports properly because of the clearance between the front of the case and your desk. But the design is kind of reminiscent with what we saw with the Lancool II Mesh, with those basement pieces, with the flaps rather, being completely open. I really like this. However, I do have a few concerns with cable management in this case, but nothing too serious, just some things to take note of. Now, there's only a few little cutouts in those rear panels to hide the cables. Now, I don't mind that the back panel on this case is glass. That's not a problem because you can hide most of the cables, but actually getting those panels to go back on, as you're seeing in this clip right here, can be a bit weird if you don't look at where the cutouts are for the cables. Now, I find it a bit odd that there's no cutout on the bottom of the right-hand panel. So if you wanted to mount, let's say, an RGB controller like I initially did on that SSD sled, it's just not gonna work. You can cut it out with tin snips if you like, but I think they should have just done that. That's just me being super critical, because if I don't mention it, then someone will complain that I didn't mention it. I also didn't mention the RAM clearance if you're using a 360mm rad up the top. You're looking at about 60 mils of clearance at the top between the RAM and the radiator and where the fans lie, so plenty of clearance here. What I think is Lian Li nailed the Lancool III, and I'm sure you guys are going to agree. However, as with all things in the world, these things cost money. Now, if you're interested in the brand new Lian Li Lancool III, they're starting at $159 for the non-RGB SKUs, and there's a whole bunch of different SKUs, like there's a white version, there's a black version, there's a white version with RGB fans and a black version with RGB fans. This is supposed to be the black version with the RGB fans. However, our sample, because this is such an early sample, we literally received this probably back in April. It doesn't have the rear fan, and they probably decided to add one later in. But that's it, right? The brand new Lancool III, I'm sufficiently sufficed. I'm gonna go out and say it again, like I did with the Lancool II and the Lancool II Mesh. This is the best case I've seen this year. Every single year, Lian Li seems to be taking that title. It's never the 011 series for me. it's always the Lancools. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you like the music you heard here, make sure you hit that join button to get access to the music. We're actually getting rid of our Patreon at the end of the month, so don't use it. Just forget it. We're also on TikTok, the Tickety Tocketies. You can check out our TikTok link in the description down below. We upload there about 3 times a week. And the TikTok content actually, just so you guys know, is not anything that you see on the channel. It's just me being me, I suppose. Bit of an idiot. And guys, if you like these videos, smash that like button. Make sure you get yourself subscribed and ring that notification bell to see more videos like this. Once again, thank you so very much for watching. I'm your sufficiently sufficed boy Nick with Gear Seekers. You peak, we seek. And I'm so glad that Lian Li took time with the Lancool III because it's a very, very nice case. In fact, I'm gonna come back to this case when I get the RAM for my Threadripper Pro system, because I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull up the divider here. I'm gonna see if we can fit that Asus Sage board in here. I think we can make it fit. Thanks for watching.